I am Suzanne LaGrande, and I am speaking with Scott Kerman, who is the Executive Director of Blanchette House in Portland, Oregon. To start, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Blanchette House and what it is that you do.
So for nearly 70 years, Blanchette House has been feeding the homeless and food insecure members of our community at our location in the Old Town, Chinatown district of downtown Portland. We also shelter men at this location. We house around 45 men at our facility. This is long-term transitional housing. So we give them case management support and opportunity to stabilize their lives.
Can you talk a little bit about how your organization has had to adapt to attempt to do the services that you regularly have done in the past?
Right. Well, I'm not going to mince words here. I think the only way to describe what's happening right now on the streets here is a humanitarian crisis. We are working with a population with high mental health and addiction needs, and we've taken this population that used to have access to services and access to places of rest and respite, and we've taken all that away from them. And so this population is now on the street 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no virtual end in sight. And in just the week and a half since everything was closed down to them, we can already see the devastating toll that this is taking on them, their physical well-being, their mental and emotional well-being, and it's truly tragic. Our role in this is to feed them and to provide them the clothing that they desperately need. Back before COVID-19, we used to invite them into our beautiful dining facility. We structured our meal program very much like a restaurant setting where we seat them at tables for four and volunteers serve them and take care of their needs. We're now serving all of our meals to go out the front door and doing the best we can to serve in that way, but still with the same compassion and respect for their dignity and humanity that we always try to emphasize when we're working with homeless and food insecure people in our community. But it has completely upended our normal operation, and we're doing this under extreme conditions. A busy day for us pre-COVID-19 might be about 1,000 to 1,100 meals in a day. We are now easily hitting about 1,600 meals a day. We've already served over 1,000 meals today, breakfast and lunch, and we have what we think will be our busiest dinner tonight because Wednesday night is spaghetti dinner, and that's always our most popular meal. So we could do about 700 meals, and we're serving every single one of those meals to go. So it is a completely changed environment for us, and we can just see how the people we are serving are struggling.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways that you have noticed just in the last week and a half that people are really having trouble now in new ways that they haven't before?
Well, there's a lot more volatility and hostility and uncertainty. I think this is going to surprise you. A good number of the people that we're serving have no idea what's going on. They have never heard of coronavirus. They are asking us why everything has been shut down. How come they can't go to the library anymore? Why is the Starbucks closed? Why can't they come in and eat in our dining facility or go inside the Union Gospel Mission or access the day shelters that used to be open around town? A lot of people are coming over from the east side because there's less food and meal service going on that side right now than down here in Old Town. And so try to imagine what that must feel like, what that would do to a person's mental well-being to have their entire worlds turned upside down any sense of normalcy that they had in their lives, any sense of routine that they had in their lives. And people on the streets have routines. They have normalcy in their lives. That has all been shattered, and they're not sure why. One of the reasons they're not sure is that their phones have gone dead. They can't charge their phones anymore. They used to be able to charge their phones in our facility or other facilities or in the library. And so they are really out of the loop with everything that's going on. And that's creating a lot of fear and confusion on their part. And we can just see how that is further destabilizing their well-being. I mean, just think about it. For people listening to this, how the last couple of weeks has affected them, their sense of security, their sense of anxiety, their sense of normalcy. Now imagine that if you were living on the street, dealing with mental health or addiction crisis, and really with no opportunity to get shelter inside. For those of us who are working in these human services agencies right now, and I mean, amazing organizations that are doing everything we can to serve this population under extreme circumstances. So that's Blanchette House, that's Portland Rescue Mission, that's Union Gospel Mission, that's Rose Haven, that's William Temple House, Transition Projects, Central City Concern. We are all seeing and talking about the same thing. This is a natural disaster. I liken it to a Class 4 hurricane that has just hit everywhere in the world at once. And for the people who are most vulnerable, it is hitting them, quite severely. Until we can start talking about what's going on in those terms, humanitarian crisis, natural disaster, I don't know if we're necessarily going to mobilize the full-scale resources that we need to deal with what will be an ongoing and escalating food insecurity and mental wellness and addiction wellness situation. What makes this natural disaster different is typically, the disaster hits one area, right? There's a hurricane or an earthquake in one location, and we can mobilize the full force of our emergency resources on that location. The situation we're dealing with now is that it's happened everywhere. Every community is struggling, and they're not necessarily in a position to help one another out. We have to help ourselves. But what we have to do is, now that we're in it, we have to be really intentional and focused on the full scale of the crisis that we're dealing with. And not just the food insecurity and the mental and physical well-being of the people who are on the street, but also the people who are homebound. They might be homebound because they're seniors and they're not able to get out, or they're disabled, or they're self-quarantining because it is in their best interest because of their health condition, or they're quarantined in shelters because they have shown to be symptomatic. We need to develop a plan to get food to what could be thousands and thousands of people. And so it's really, when I think about the food insecurity crisis that we're facing right now, I think about it as two sides of the same coin. We've got serious food insecurity issues with people who are living on the street, and we've got serious and potentially growing food insecurity issues with people who are homebound and who are unable to access food on their own. And that's going to take a massive outlay of resources, not just producing food that can be delivered, but actually mobilizing a force that can go out and deliver that food to where it needs to be.
Can I ask you how you're managing right now with your current staff to be able to meet this need?
So how are we managing? Right now we're managing mostly on willpower and adrenaline. Mm-hmm. So, I try not to stop. because if I stop, I'm not really sure I'm going to be able to get back up again. And there's a lot of people who could say the same thing. There are a lot of people working in these social services agencies who are putting in very long hours, very long weeks, because the crisis is that significant, and there's no opportunity to hold back. We lost, I would say, about 90% of our typical volunteer community as this crisis, as this pandemic has unfolded. A lot of our volunteers were elderly, and so for obviously good reasons, they're not coming in to volunteer. They're staying home where it is safe. A lot of our volunteers were school groups and business groups. Well, the schools aren't in session anymore. Businesses have shut down or scaled back operations. So, we've been left with a very committed but much smaller, dedicated volunteer base. These are heroes. These are people who are coming every single day, and they are sometimes coming more than once a day, volunteering for breakfast in the morning and then coming back and volunteering either for lunch or for dinner. We've also been introduced to a brand new community of volunteers, people who have never been to Blanchette House before, but individuals, many of them, I believe probably in their 20s or young 30s, who are, for whatever reason, left with a lot of time on their hands. They've either been laid off from their work or they were going to school and their schools have been shut down, and they are so desperate and willing to do something productive and meaningful to help out with this crisis that they've been coming to us and showing up day after day after day since last week. This week alone, we've had 54 discrete volunteers come to serve with us, and many of them have come, all 3 days this week and for multiple meals. And so I'm hoping that this continues, that new volunteers seek us out, and that, frankly, that everybody stays healthy. And so,
absolutely, sure.
Right. So as long as we can, and look, we are an essential service, and we see our volunteers, and I believe the city and the state sees our volunteers as essential as well. There's no way we could provide these services without them. We also rely on our shelter residents, and they have been heroes in this too. And I am so proud of how our shelter residents have stood up to be a solution to this crisis. And I can tell from talking to them that this is having a measurable impact on their confidence and their self-esteem. I've had a number of residents pull me aside to say, "Hey, Scott, I just want to tell you I am so proud to be a part of this and to be doing something and to making a difference in this crisis." And so, that's the kind of thing that is just going to sustain me through the long hours. This is an emotional roller coaster because we know the community that we serve. These aren't faceless masses to us. We know their names. We know a lot of their histories, and we know that they are in pain and that they are in trouble. And so there's a lot of tears. There's a lot of tears throughout the day, but there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of positivity, and so we try to grasp onto that as much as we can.
I am Suzanne LaGrande, and this is We Are All in This Together.